This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 323.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramzi Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Ramzi Majaba, a sales engineer turned solution specialist, which is another word for salesperson these days. But I still love sales engineering and I like to talk about it because it's the best career I've had. My guest today, his name is Harman Bamra, and he has an interesting path into sales engineering, and we talk about how many people right now are having interesting paths, and his was unique, and I enjoyed the way he came into that role, and I'll leave him to explain the actual path. But one of the things that we talked about, and I want to highlight, is sales engineers tend to work with customers to help them buy a product. And many times after the customer buys, they are left in a vacuum. Customer success or implementation comes in, but there is no continuous involvement from one person to take them from pre-sales to post-sales and implementation. Well, there's a new role out there, which is a technical solution advisor, and that's where Harman comes in. That's his new role. His new role is to be the expert who kind of bridges the gap between solution engineering and implementation. And we talk about it, how it came about, and our opinions. We also talk about getting jobs as sales engineers, RFPs, should we respond, should we not. There are many things that we talk about, but this is one interesting topic that we mentioned. The show notes will be on WeTheSalesEngineers.com/show 323. And with that, let's jump into the show. Mr. Harman, I was going to say your last name, and then I realized I don't know how to say it.
Bamra.
Is the H silent?
The H is silent, yeah.
Bamra, but I got dyslexic for a sec. Okay.
So good.
Well, Mr. Bamra, welcome to the show.
You,
now that it's official. How you doing?
I'm very good. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. We talked briefly earlier, and you mentioned a non-traditional path to sales engineering. Maybe we can cover that briefly by introducing yourself, who you are, what you do, and how you ended up where you ended up.
Definitely. Yeah. So I have, it's good to frame it the way you just framed it at the beginning, right? The non-traditional path to becoming an SC. So my background is pretty unusual. But that being said, I'm sure there are people out there that have got unusual paths to becoming a sales engineer as well. My background is as a literature student, so firmly in the humanities and as a linguist. So studied English and Italian at university. I firmly thought that I would be a diplomat or an interpreter or a translator. And part of the early part of my career actually took me to working in international affairs or humanitarian affairs at the UN in Geneva. I never thought that I'd end up working in tech, close to tech, but I had spent an early part of my teenage years, most of my teenage years, building computers and playing video games and debugging things. So it was always there in the background. I just never thought I'd use it in a professional capacity. I thought you had to learn how to code and, you had to do computer science at university and that type of thing. So it was only sort of, I suppose, when I moved back from Geneva, I had an opportunity to build, to help in sort of consulting my family business on how to go digital. The family business was a pharmacy, a community pharmacy. And there was an opportunity there to sort of, build a digital presence for the community pharmacy group that my father owned at the time. And that sort of took me, right into deep waters. It was, find a developer, understand what the makeup of the tech stack might be. Does it need to be scalable? Can you take it off the shelf? What are the types of tools that you might need for this type of project? Given the industry that you're in, are those commoditized? Can you just buy them off the shelf? That type of thing. So that very, very quickly led me to being a jack of all trades, I suppose. I was doing marketing, SEO, engaging with the devs, building products, and at the same time building out this monstrous platform to which I still own the code for. But yeah, it gave me a real insight into sort of how software is built, and how you extract business value from it.
All right, a few questions.
Go for it.
You grew up playing with computers, putting them together, and yet you chose literature. I haven't met a single person who's put a computer together that didn't go into computer networking or engineering. Or what made you, out of all the things in the
Hmm.
world, what drew you to literature and being a diplomat?
So as a kid, I grew up playing video games because I'm 41. And I still remember the first Game Boy. I still remember, TVs, uh, getting access to cable TV and stuff like that. And I also had I was given a computer, like a 486. I remember, the 386s, the 486s. I remember the sort of the advent of computers and how they became more and more powerful. But with that also, I had some friends who played games. And one of my friends, actually, his name is Ramsey. He's a good friend of mine. Um, we used to get together on weekends, and instead of just playing the games, he would go. He was an engineer. He is an engineer. So he would go, "Hey, Harman, let's take that out and see why this is connected to that." So the beginning of trying to understand why things are the way they are started with the very, very first computers that we had access to. And then the types of games I was playing, role playing games and adventure games, they were always a little bit more, you become more involved in the world, and you'd have to try and understand why you were doing certain things a certain way. Now, when it comes to literature, this was more of a sort of an academic pursuit. I was good at most things, but I loved reading. I was obsessed with reading from a very early age. I took that through all the way to school. And at school, I distinctly remember when I was, I think it was about 13. No, sorry, it was about 15, 16 when I went to what is known as secondary school. Although I was in a private school, but it was that sort of type of environment. I was given the choice of Italian or German as a second language. I chose Italian, largely because the literature we'd exposed to was very like antiquated. It was medieval literature, so I got exposed to Dante, Divine Comedy. That was the one that really set me on that path of being obsessed with literature, and it just opened me up to this magical world of morals and ethics and the right way to do things, and how religion and politics intertwined, and the stories that come around that and how they're connected to history. And it honestly, that was where it started. And even just thinking back to it now, I get a little bit sort of, you get this sense of melodrama in my head. But, the truth is that I was captivated by the stories, all the way through to, when I studied at university. And this is, something we'll discuss, and I'll bring it back full circle. But the idea of romantic individualism, this scenario, those early romantic periods and the medieval periods, you couldn't really affect the world. The world affected you. That type of sort of thing captivated me. But I was always a techie. I will always be a techie. So I do have this kind of odd, I think it's odd. I'm sure there are other people out there with this, these types of interests, but I loved and still love computers whilst also being obsessed with the world of literature.
There's a few parallels between you and myself.
Cool.
One, so my name is Ramsey, like your best friend, but also my best friend's name growing up was Ramsey,
Okay.
just written differently.
Nice.
And we lived in the same building. He was one apartment higher than that I was. And I was obsessed with reading. I used to read a book an hour. The Hardy would. It wasn't like a Tom Clancy or anything like that. But I didn't get into the literature. I never I tried reading Shakespeare. I'm like, well, he's not even speaking English. So
Yeah, I love
maybe that's
that.
where our path deviated. But I'm Lebanese, right? English is my second
Sure.
language, and Shakespeare is a third language. I find.
Absolutely.
So in so many questions about like the your path, but also I wanted to ask about when you went back home and you started helping your father with the digitization of his pharmacy. How did you know you're going to be able to do it, right? And most people will not take that on, especially coming from a literature and diplomatic background, to come in and say like, "Oh, sure, yeah, I'll digitize your presence." How did you know you're going to be able to do it, and what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome?
So, really good question. A little bit of additional context, I suppose. When the internet sort of came to be, I was at school, and we were also blown away by the fact that you could download an MP3 in 30 minutes and stuff like that. And we would go to me and my friends, we would go to school. So in Kensington, there was something some of your listeners will probably be familiar with, the Easy Internet Cafe, or EasyJet, the company. They used to have internet cafes. And you could go in and for £1, I think, like $1 or whatever it is, you could get a CD and you could spend that hour downloading whatever you wanted. So you would download music. And then, I wanted to understand how websites work. So me and my friend would just look at basic HTML and go, oh, we can do this. And then we started learning how you build really basic text-based websites, then sort of incorporating a little bit of JavaScript and little things like that. So we started building websites, and there were music websites, just talking about albums and what have you. So I started getting exposed to how you build websites. Then very quickly things changed and you started getting website builders, Dreamweaver and things like that. So my learning, the learning I had related to sort of how you build websites started to increase, and it started to become more consumerized, that space. So when I moved to Geneva, whilst I was working in sort of in humanitarian affairs, and it was a very sort of heavy information-based role, I was still looking at their website, for example, going, well, why can't you do this way? And should we revamp the website to make it Web 2.0 and all of this stuff? So I've always had this desire to want to improve the way things are, if there is a value, if you can associate a value to it. And that's where I had this sort of confidence moving back. And I just thought, right, I know a little bit of SEO. I can do this. I'm sure I can do this. And my dad basically set me a really sort of a simple target. I wasn't going to affect the existing business operations because I wasn't a pharmacist. I made it clear I didn't want anything to do with the professional side of things. Let me treat this as a simple project on the side with its own revenue stream, its own P&L. I wanted to treat it like like a business unit. That's how it started. And that's how it ended, really. When my father sold the business, I kept it very separate. But no, I didn't know what was going to come of it. And I genuinely didn't know as it was sort of ticking off. I didn't know whether it would be successful at all. The main challenge, just to answer your question directly, was getting stakeholder buy-in, because I was basically working in a space where I wasn't a medic. I didn't have any formal pharmacy training. I didn't understand the industry outside of, having spent the odd Saturday growing up helping my dad at the till, delivering prescriptions for elderly patients at care homes and things like that. I'm not a scientist in that respect. So the main thing was trying to get people to understand that this is possible. This is the new world. People want to be able to consume services digitally as well as in person, but also, can you replicate the feeling or the kind of interactions that you would get in a community pharmacy online? So that was the second big challenge, but also something that drove the project and sort of helped it become what it became. If that makes sense.
Okay. Maybe we can define community pharmacy, because I don't think I have that in Canada. Maybe we do, and I'm not aware of. Could you define
Definitely. So you most certainly do. It's not too dissimilar. It's just the pharmacy you would go to with your prescription to pick up your medication. So it's the one.
So it's a pharmacy.
It's basic. We refer to them as community pharmacies because generally you have a number of pharmacies per area, and this is something that's defined by the authorities. So you have your local pharmacy that you might go to. You wouldn't necessarily go to a chain, although that is becoming more and more commonplace now with the likes of Boots.
That's what we have a lot of. So when you said you wanted to get, the reason I was asking is, you want to get stakeholder buy-in. You're basically going to get stakeholder buy-in for all the pharmacies in your local area,
Yeah, no. So
or just your
yeah.
dad.
So we started. They're all independents. They were part of a group, but they were all independent. So they served the community as independent pharmacies. But I operated just in one, and I wanted to basically maximize the potential of just one. So that community was in West London. The sort of headquarters were there, but it served customers nationally because it was e-commerce, right?
I'm trying to understand who the stakeholders were.
So what I'm
Was it
talking about
other
are
pharmacies?
internal stakeholders. So to digitize something like pharmacy, to give patients access to things like prescription medications requires a lot of understanding of red tape and regulations. But also when you're digitizing those processes, so for example, think about them as guided assistance online. You start off with a couple of questions, then they go into health questions. That information gets passed on to a prescriber. That prescriber then needs to assess the questions and then spit back a response. All of that resource was held within our pharmacy. So nothing ever went to a third party. So the prescribing was done internally by a pharmacist prescriber, which at the time was extremely novel. And that's why I had to house a lot of the processes internally. And I had to sort of basically create the tech stack around that because it needed to be something that we could own and that's something that we could iterate on. If, for example, a regulator turned around, which they did in like a year's time and go, right, you guys can't do this in this way. You need to change the flow a little bit.
You mentioned you had to look at hire. You were asking yourself you should hire coders or hire X people. Did you end up hiring people to help you with this?
Yeah. So the I had a team. So I started out with like going to a developer who went to the same university as me. I didn't know him, but that developer, his wife was also a developer based up in Cambridge. And I started with them. And for them at the time, it was just like a small project. But within like 2 years, he quit his job and was working on this full time, and it became like his private project. He's still a very, very good friend of mine, came to my wedding, that type of thing. So I basically used the same development team from day one all the way through till the end. But the other parts that supported the business, so marketing, digital marketing, SEO, PR, that's after a couple of years, once we generated enough revenue, I went out to agency for those. So I was using digital agencies and copywriting agencies and things like that.
I'm very curious about that aspect because as sales engineers, we always talk about selling, right? Our job is to sell. Your job is at that point was to buy. How was that process? Do you see any faults that you like?
100%.
Now I do it differently because of that.
100%. So I didn't know it at the time, but when I would assess these vendors, and believe you me, there were so many, as you can imagine, because we built everything internally, everything down to like requests that my operations staff at the time, if they wanted to put a request in, rather than buy a tool to do it, we built it. It was small, right? I could justify the cost, so we did it. People would come to me and go, "Hey, can we show you this? This would be very, very beneficial for your business." And half the time I would look at it and go, "I don't need this. I don't want to spend money on this. I can just build it because there's no point. It's not, I just don't see the value in it." And I could see flaws in the way they were trying to push this to me because they wouldn't understand the context of the business that I had set up. They wouldn't take, none of them ever took time to understand how we had started. There was only one business that actually took time to come and visit us. When they came to visit us, they understood that we were basically a tiny little business within a business, albeit we were generating millions in revenue. So that lack of contextual or desire to understand the context is really something that I took into my SE role. And that's, kind of why I said I'd bring this full circle, because when I decided I wanted to go back into the corporate world, or I wanted to go back into the professional world rather, and work for a software company or work for a consultancy, what I started looking for was roles where I could be consultative, but genuinely consultative. And once I got into the SE role, the first thing I thought of was, right, I need to really understand what customers want. And if a customer doesn't want to hear what I am saying, then it's better to walk away or understand the context within which you're talking to them. And I think that really helped me because I didn't know what sales engineering was when I went into it. I went in thinking it was a consultative role. I didn't understand how sales cycles work. But as soon as I was exposed to it, it was, it took me a couple of weeks. I was like, okay, I've been here before. I was just on the other side of the phone. That's all it was.
For someone who
Right.
ran his own business, by the way, I know you were working with your dad, but you had your own thing within the bigger.
I did.
You could have made the choice, like, you know what? We just sold this. I can right now start my own business because I know how to
Mm.
run it. Why did you choose to go into the corporate world?
I really, at the time, I desperately wanted to change. I liked the idea of being out there on your own and building it. And honest, I have to be honest, watching the growth was exhilarating. It was amazing having a team, then having a small unit at the back being built. And it was amazing being able to manage your own P&L and, you know, have reports that indicated success and all of this stuff, but you're very much on your own. And what I desire, given that, I still feel I'm relatively young, at the time I thought, like, let's go back and experience what the world of software is like, or the tech world. I had this sort of like romantic idea that, being a consultant, a tech consultant, I could really make a difference and I could do something a little bit, I could be a bit of a unique character within that role, given my background. So that's basically what I've ended up doing. Who knows? I may end up going back into business in my own capacity at some point, but this is something I felt like I needed to do and I wanted to do, and I really wanted to do it within sort of like a big team that was either scaling up or was a startup or something along those lines. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to be part of a really, really big team and try and deliver value that way. It's a life. Think of it as a life experience, I suppose.
No, 100%. I get that. I want to see your perspective about it because a lot of us have that fantasy of, all right, we're going to start our own thing. And they don't know how lonely
Yeah, it's super early.
something. All the decisions are on you and who are you going to talk to? You're going to have to find. So, yeah, no, I get that. Now, the question that's popping in my head is, you studied literature, you worked as a diplomat for a while, and then you start your own business, which for 2-3 years.
It was 6-7 years actually.
6-7 years. Okay. How did you convince someone to hire you as a pre-sales engineer? You don't have the traditional pre-sales requirements.
No, absolutely. I think so there are, there is always a dark side to, trying to look for a job. The stuff that gets, often excluded when you're talking about these, ideas is the hard graft it takes, looking at job descriptions, trying to get them to match to your skill set and trying to find companies that might hire people with backgrounds like yours, And it's very humbling because, I could have sat there and gone, right, I've done X, Y, and Z. I've generated this much revenue. I don't need someone to tell me that I'm not applicable for this job or that job. But, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And it took a lot of time and, failed applications and, lots of interviews and things like that. But I ended up having a conversation with now a friend of mine, a guy called Manish Patel, top sales engineer. He's the one who sort of, took me on, got me started on this path. But I had a chat with him. And what was really interesting was, and it was a company called Channel Advisor. I didn't know who they were really, other than just, they did marketplace stuff. But when I was talking to him, he's like, oh, this is really cool. I have my own business as well. And, I kind of did a little bit of what you used to do as well. I think you'd be a good fit for this, sales engineering type role because a lot of what you do, a lot of your skill set, we need this. The rest of it you can learn and I can teach you. So it was a lot of trial and error. Is the long and short of it.
I know many.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Yeah.
I just sounds so familiar. And he's still at Channel Advisor.
No, I don't know. So he's not there at the moment. He's not there at the moment, I believe.
Okay. So you got in
Yeah.
there, and now you've been in SE for a while, but you're no longer an
No.
SE technically.
No.
I don't know what is your current
Yeah.
role?
So interesting. Yes, I was an SE for a while. Then I was sort of leading an SE team or solutions engineering team. Now my role is formerly known as technical solutions advisor. But what's really, really interesting is that whilst it sounds like more of a post-sale account management type role, because I manage customer accounts, enterprise accounts, on behalf of the company that I work for, Zubu. But the role itself sits within the broader solutions function. So this is kind of novel to me, and especially within the world of sales engineering, it's kind of unique because what you have is the pre-sales, the post-sales, and the account management all sitting under the broader solutions function, which is, at Zuvu is led by my former boss, another, incredible sales engineer or solutions engineer, Julie Moore. And this is something that I have seen, I think James Kakis, I've seen him mention this as well, but the evolution of solutions engineering into, actually being a complete business function that owns the entirety of the technical sale is something that, is really, really revolutionary. I think it's something that I'm living and breathing right now, because to give you an idea, I'm involved, for example, with new customer opportunities. I'm involved in the pre-sale sort of motion, albeit I'm not doing too much. You have a sales engineer that does the demo, does the discovery and stuff like that. But it's incumbent on me to understand the technical scope of any opportunity, because if and when they sign, they then become my responsibility. And it's on me to sort of understand how they can get the best value from a solution perspective out of, the solution, out of the software that they just bought. But the fact that it's kept within the solutions org is novel. I think it's very, very unique. It means you have this better, you can create better understanding and communication flows and information flows between sales and solutions, but also solutions and implementation. And that's where the sort of, the gold starts to appear, because I've often seen, well, not often, in my short career, I've seen, a little bit of dissonance between, what services expect or can do or have the resource for, and what sales want to try and bring you. And sometimes the solutions engineers just get lumped in with the sales team, which is fine, not a problem, of course.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, just to preface that. I think your role is a great idea, but playing devil's advocate for a second, shouldn't the SE be doing what you just said you would have to do?
It's a fair point, and to a degree, yes, but I think it sometimes depends on the makeup of the company, so the stage of their evolution of the journey that they're at, but also the type of software. Because if it's a software that's, for example, overly complex, so for example, in my last role, Elastic Path, the product itself was not always as easy to understand, and it required a lot of discovery to understand if it would be applicable to a particular business. So in that case, the discovery that's done is extremely detailed. Sometimes it's, more than one or two sessions. So the SE does that, leads it, and, it's so that it answers that question. But in certain cases where the software is a little easier to consume, or maybe it's a little bit more fast paced in terms of the, the sales cycle, the SEs have a specific role. And that specific role is to demonstrate the value of the software. That's it. Get a customer to sign. And I think that's where this role starts to become very, very interesting with companies that are trying to transition away from just sell software, understand the ramifications later. This is where this role becomes very, very important, because you can nip those issues in the bud very, very early, especially when you have effectively two solutions engineering minded individuals as part of the sales process.
I see the value in the sense that when we as sales engineers, especially for companies that don't follow, like you have a sales team that are their only job is to find a new deal versus manage the whole customer. When you work with enterprise customers, you manage the entire customer sales cycle, which includes post sales. But for companies who are in growth mode and their salespeople are just jumping from one deal to the next, at least talk a lot in theory. This is how our product helps you, and we need to add the quotations in theory. Right? And then the customer signs, and then the SE moves on, and now someone has to put in that theory into reality. And I feel like that's where you come in,
100%.
where you're making sure that what the theory is correct. We oversell.
100%. So this is a good point. It's a really, really valid point. When I first joined Channel Advisor, Manish's boss at the time, a guy called Johan Marin, again, another brilliant sales engineer. He's now at Salesforce, I believe. And he gave me one really, really valuable bit of advice. I think it was in my second week. He's like, hey, Harman, if you want to do well and you want to keep, you want to do well in this role, not specifically, just broadly do well, but you want to do well at this company and you want to do well in your role, make sure you understand what the implementation team need. What he meant by that was not what do you need to tick off on a box to make sure that they're happy. It was really try to understand their limitations, their resource constraints, and make sure you factor that into how you engage your prospects and how you manage your AEs. So this is something that I have kept with me in every single role. And it's serendipity that I've ended up in a role where basically this is not a pre-requirement, it's baked into my job title. And that's why I'm excited by this. That's why I'm really excited by, I'm really enthused by sort of like the pre-sales community at large. Like I've followed your podcast, like I've seen the kinds of guests that you have on there. Loads of, our fellow sales engineers, solutions engineers are talking about this in some capacity. So it's exciting to actually be a sort of one of those first cogs in the wheels of change, so to speak.
So again, being part of an enterprise team, I have to manage the entire sales cycle. And if I sell something and the customer is unhappy, they will raise hell, and I will lose either the renewal or they might send everything back and say, you know what, I'm done working with you. The problem I see is a lot of companies, they have these complex contracts that are 3 years long that once you sell, it's very hard for the customer to back out of, and then they don't care. Like, oh, we just have the short-term goal of doing this so we can sell the company or go IPO or whatever it is. And we don't care if the customer is successful, which really pisses me off. But if a company doesn't have that and the customer is able to cancel, if there's no one like you who kind of, well, like your previous Johan, who said that understand what implementations need. If you sell something and implementations can't implement, they can just cancel the contract, and now you just lost everything. And it's always harder to sell to an angry customer than to someone who likes you. One thing you mentioned earlier, as we were talking about your people coming to sell you stuff, is that they didn't try to understand your business. And I just had a sales call with someone who jumped on a call with me, who was trying to sell me something, and I wrote a blog about dissecting his all that person's there. So hard to jump on calls right now with the salesperson. I don't really care what they're selling me. I just care about how. And he didn't ask me a single thing about my business.
Yeah.
He said that he understands what my business is, but he didn't reiterate that. And if he doesn't understand the why, like why did I start this business? How are you going to help me? So easy when it's one person. Like you're a small company at the time, right? When you were running the digital pharmacy portion for your, so it should have been easy for someone to come and ask you about your business. And as it gets bigger, it gets harder. But most did not ask you why. Most didn't understand the why behind the why. Right? I think that's the term that you mentioned to me last time we chatted. So right now in your current role, or even in your previous role, how did you learn to figure out what the why is behind the why, and how do you continue to use that
Yeah.
today?
Awesome question. And yeah, so there's no straight answer. There are loads of different influences that have led me to sort of consistently think this way and really want to take this into my career. The first thing I mentioned is that, I think we're somewhat disposed to basically, or rather our brains are somewhat disposed to basically looking for shortcuts, right? Heuristics, influenced by context. So we think we are acting independently. We think we are being dynamic and sort of going out there and sort of acting as independent individuals. Whereas the reality, and you'll see this just in that, well, perfect example of the AE that you're just talking about, or, companies coming and talking to you and not asking you a question about your business. That's an example of that. That individual probably thinks I'm acting independently here. There's nothing rehearsed here. The truth is we end up doing that, just acting rather than reacting to a situation. So the I starts to become more of this kind of, it can become very, very static. We're not actually doing anything. Whereas the truth of it is that we need to be dynamic. Okay. We need to be able to understand, why are you sitting there looking glum, on this particular day? Sometimes it's just a case of just wanting to understand that. And with, lots of sales people and people in sales cycles, they don't have the time and they don't care because they've got they've got a pipe to get through and they've got a quota to meet and all of that stuff. But from my perspective, the reason why this was so top of mind, one of the influences is it comes from my martial arts training. So I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I've been training for about 14, 15 years. And what's very, very interesting about that, and not just my other martial arts as well, is when you are training or competing or whatever it is, you can learn as many techniques as you want and then apply them to a static object or your training partner. But when you go in to compete, if you do not understand, take a moment to try to understand the scenario in which you're in, you sink very quickly. So adrenaline takes over. And before you know it, you've lost or you've been choked out or whatever it is. You don't even know what's happened. Taking that step, that breath, just to assess what's going on is vitally important. Then when you start getting into the actual, nitty gritty of fighting or competing, in my case, it's grappling, you look for impulses, you look for responses. Okay. So that only comes from having an understanding of the fact that your individual may look as though they're tired, but they might not be tired. Your individual looks strong, but they may not be strong. You have to be able to sort of apply that thinking, as opposed to just going in there going, I know this, I am going to do this, and that's it. Because it might work one or two times, but it won't work all the time. And that's that, you got to have this flexible mindset is just something I've had stuck in my head.
Just to add to that story, I'm a white belt, no stripes jiu-jitsu practitioner, if you will. My kids have been doing it for a long time, and since they started being able to beat me up, I'm like, maybe I should start some jiu-jitsu. But something that I noticed is that they tell you how to do something, and when you're the static object, your partner is allowing you to do it, it's very easy. And as soon as you start rolling with even someone like a white belt with 2 stripes, and you're doing something to them, and then they do something completely different from what you were told they're going to do, then you failed, right? And then they got your back and they choke you out. And that's when I started understanding, like, all right, they're telling me to do this. Why? Why are they telling me to do this? Oh, this is the concept of putting pressure here or don't put your balance there. That's why they're telling you to do this. It's like, now I can use that in my rolling.
Absolutely.
And the same thing comes with sales engineering. We had a customer invite us over to chat with them about our newest product. That customer has not bought from us for 10 years. They always bought from the competitor. Okay. And we were so happy to just be in there. And like, hey, why do you want to do this? Oh, I just want to give you the opportunity to win a deal. We never thought to ask why. It's like, all right, cool. Thank you. You're so kind. But it turns out, like, after digging in and staying, because I'm an enterprise customer level SE or sales, I keep working with the same customers over and over. So it took me 4 months or 5 months to figure out, oh, they're having a problem with the competitor, with the incumbent, with this specific area, and they're looking to see if we're going to solve it, and we haven't even touched on it. And as soon as I figured out that why, and why is that important, right? Like, oh, can you do this? Why is that important? Like, all right, the incumbent's becoming slower in that aspect, which is slowing down production for them, which means they're slowing down revenue. Cool. Let me show them how fast we are. And as soon as we did that, that's when we won a deal. Now, I've since then switched from the competitor to the incumbent, and we fixed that problem. But most of us, like, when we say do a discovery like this, we don't ask why.
Exactly.
We're curious about technology. Like, why does this work like that? But I don't find a lot of SEs are curious about human behavior, which is what I think, like, your background in diplomacy and literature and all that, I think that gives you an edge in that aspect.
Yes. Yeah, you couldn't have done it better. I mean, what I loved, again, talking about the broader sales engineering community, is not just the fact that it's really vocal and there's all these great initiatives like the Pre-Sales Collective and podcasts like yours, but it's also the fact that there's so many talented individuals from different walks of life. So I've come across solutions engineers that were teachers, solutions engineers that were in the army. And what's unique about those individuals, actually one solutions engineer I've since I spoke to him about a role actually, but he was in a band. So he was in a band that toured with Dream Theater and the works at a Paul Logue is his name. Super interesting guy, but like you would never think, how would you go from being bona fide rock star to being a sales engineer? But you have to know people. And I think that the most important thing is that people buy from people. This is such an old line. People don't buy the way you think they buy. They buy from people. And if you don't like that person you're talking to, or you have identified that that person is not listening to you, it's really easy to put the phone down or just lead someone on, and if you want to include that in your pipe, I don't care. You go off and do that, but I'm never going to buy from you. I'm just going to keep leading you on. And,
they'll only buy if they absolutely have to and don't have an option.
Yeah. Or just to be spiteful. Sure. I've never done that.
So, but I've been in situations where I know they didn't like my salesperson and they had to buy anyways.
Okay.
But they bought despite of the salesperson, not because he didn't help them make a decision or anything like that. But I've been in situations right now where, because my customers like me, their competitors doing better technically, they feel bad for me and they still want to help me somehow. So yeah, like being likable. And something that I find strange is when I talk to managers, almost every one of them, or not every one of them, a lot of them think that we can't teach technology, we can teach human relationships. Whereas I find it the complete opposite. It's so easy to teach technology, especially when you don't need to get in the weeds, but it's so much harder to teach people how to debug humans.
100%. I mean, if you think back to the age-old dilemma that we often discuss in our community about RFPs, yes or no, do we engage or do we don't, or do we not? It's a simple question of just why. So why in the first place? Why were we invited to this RFP? Oh, I don't know. It's a huge company and our competitors might be involved. So great, let's just enter. Yeah, but why? Are we going to win it? Don't know. If our competitor involved and they're far, more capable and better resourced, winning these types of RFPs and have done so in the past, then why are we even bothering? Are we just here to make up the number? Because without asking those questions, you can just waste time, waste resources, and get other people's hopes up. And within the context of a SaaS company, that can sometimes be a large percentage of the company, and it can have pretty bad ramifications if, for example, it doesn't go the way you want it to. So ask those questions early, get them out of the way, and then focus on the things that can deliver value.
I haven't responded to an RFP in forever. Despite that, my SEs, right? Because I am in field now. I don't know. Sorry to tell you that. My SEs choose that they want to respond to it anyway. I'm like, but why? We're getting this. It's obviously using terminology from the competitors. Obviously, they built it with the competitors. They're asking about features that we name them completely differently. Why are you spending your time on this? Like, we have to, because, it's a big company. It's a big company that's not going to buy from you. If you have cycles to do it, by all means, do it. I'm not even going to put it on my list of things. I'm not even going to follow up with you on it. So, and that's, but I find most salespeople are the opposite, like, where we got an RFP, we need to respond right now.
It's that exact thing that I mentioned before. Default behavior is identify personality type, identify a little, the consistent themes here. Suddenly, triggers go off in your brain and you go, okay, I'm acting independently now. We can go ahead and win this because you validate it in your own head. But, if you actually take a step back, you'll realize that you're being influenced by context.
You know what I just realized? Job descriptions are RFPs.
Yeah, basically.
Job descriptions are RFPs. That's why 99% of the people who apply don't even get an interview. And they're either thinking of someone internally, or they know someone that they want to hire, or they're going to reach out to someone through a connection, versus whoever submitted their interview, responded to the request for, I guess, the resume.
We should change it from now on. Request for resume. There you go.
Someone posted a job description that required 5 years of ChatGPT experience.
Okay, amazing.
Cool.
Walk away.
So you're asking for whoever built it.
Yeah, you see a lot of that. I've seen now. I mean, we leverage AI. We have AI, baked into our platform, but I have seen plenty of these job descriptions. It requires 10 years of, AI. Like, what? I'm not sure what you mean by that. An academic level? Or,
So it's time to move on to the not so fire on Harman. I'd love to hear your thoughts. These are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest, and
go for it.
I want to know what you think. We've talked a lot about sales engineering and your path into it. What's kept you? What do you love about sales engineering that kept you in that role for now?
The problem solving aspect of it is really exciting. So solving technical issues for, or rather identifying and then solving them with software is the thing that excites me. And doing that for enterprise businesses is really, really good fun.
Okay, that's good. Question number 2. So you talked about a few of your bosses that you've worked with throughout the year. If they were to come together and discuss Harman, what would they say is your superpower?
I think it's adaptability. If I'm going to pick one, it'd probably be adaptability.
If you pick 3, because there's 3 people talking.
Adaptability is one. Perseverance is another, and then ability to be able to build relationships, I suppose, is another. Communication.
That's good. I usually don't ask for 3. For some reason,
You stumped me there.
On the spot.
One and then went 3.
Didn't work. I tried to, but it didn't work. Question number 3. You mentioned Pre-Sales Collective. You mentioned my podcast. Is there a book or resource you recommend to people who want to do better at sales engineering?
Yeah, the first one I'd say go get Chris White's book on I can't remember the name of it now. The 6 Habits of a Successful Sales. Yeah, it's fundamental.
I can never forget it. He's pounded it into my head.
It's right there. It's fundamental reading. First book I bought. I've listened to him on your podcast. I've heard him pop up in other podcasts as well. Just it's all in there. Everything's in there. I'll be the first one. And then I suppose if you're going to not that you're giving me another one, but I'd suggest go out there and read books that can help you understand context. So a very good one is Sam Summers' Situations Matter. It's very light, easy reading. It's not complicated. He's funny. And it's not necessarily within the context of technology or anything like that. It's more just like I suppose, a very, very high level overview of like contextual understanding. It doesn't go into it doesn't go into too much detail, in terms of sort of psychology and things like that. You can go down the rabbit hole a little bit if you want.
Some people enjoy that. Sam Summers, Situations Matter, Understanding
That's
Content.
yeah,
Okay.
really, really good.
So I'll leave a link to that in the
For
show
sure.
notes for show 323. All right. So you gave me 6 habits. You gave me this. Okay. If you want, I can ask you for another one, or we can move on.
Trying to think another one.
You don't have to. I feel like you have a lot of knowledge and.
It's not coming. It's not
All
coming
right.
to mind. Let's leave it at those two because they're fantastic.
Two
Cool.
is good. I'm pushing my luck. So last question of the not fire round. Is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional?
Yeah, I think being more organized. I'm relatively organized in my work, but I need to I can always do better. And I think, for example, as a musician, I've got a lot of, as you can see, lots of music stuff everywhere. I'm getting better
I'm
at
gonna ask you.
categorizing it and putting it where it needs to be so I can use it better. And so I can play my songs better and learn to play better.
So you're a musician, black belt in jiu-jitsu, diplomat.
Not diplomat. I
solution
work in
special-
diplomatic affairs. I would.
diplomatish. Does that work? Is that a word? So I guess your superpower is being everything. I don't know.
Adapt.
Or being
Being
good at
adapt.
it. Adaptable. That's adaptability. That's pretty good. Harman, if people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Yeah, just Harman Bamra. Just you'll see me in my smiling face. Probably the best place.
Is there a question you're hoping I was going to ask you,
No.
which I did not?
No, I don't think there was. Unless you want to ask me another random fire question, go for it. You're feeling curved.
Now you're putting me on
There
the
you go.
spot. What's your favorite music instrument?
Guitar. My guitar.
Why?
Yeah. Just because they introduced me to rock and roll. My favorite musicians played guitars.
All right, cool.
I like noise.
I could ask you who your favorite musicians are, but we're at the top of the hour.
I don't have one,
think we
and
should
I'd be
call it.
talking for quite a while, so.
Let's leave it at that. Armin, it was a pleasure,
Likewise.
and I'm looking forward to further conversation.
Definitely. Thank you for having me on.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Harman, for coming on and sharing your experience. What did you guys think? I mean, are you in a similar position, or did you have a similar path to sales engineering? Did anyone actually was running their own business or department and then switch from that into sales engineering? I'd be more than curious. I'd be curious to know about that. And from now on, we're going to be calling job descriptions as requests for resume, RFRs. And we know that RFRs don't generally lead to jobs, so make sure that they build the RFR with you in mind. That's it for me. Show notes are at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show 323. And with that, I'm signing off.